I'm a retired Brigadier General SIMION Eduard, and I'm a Senior Fellow Associate with NATO Strategic Center, and I'm delighted to be your moderator today. First of all, I welcome our guests, Madam Secretary of State Simona COJOCARU, State Secretary, Ministry of National Defense, Romania, and Mr. Jonatan VSEVIOV, Secretary General, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Estonia. But we will start after my introductory with a video sent by Mrs. KARLIN, the Assistant Secretary for Defense for Strategy, Plans and Capabilities. But before doing that, I would like to address a few topics around which we will center our conversation today. And with your permission, I will mention the panel title, which is Transatlantic Cooperation and the Challenges Posed by Russia's War in Ukraine, Stronger Together. So the questions are, which are the main lessons to be learned from Ukraine with regards to the transatlantic political and military cooperation? The second one would be, how important is that all NATO member states have a common position towards Russian order in order to achieve an efficient deterrence by resilience? And the last but not the least, what additional measures should be taken to make sure that complementarity, cooperation, and the fair share of NATO-EU tasks are fully functional and European partners are ready to assume more responsibility to their own defense. And with that, I will ask my technical support colleagues to help me with the video sent by Madam KARLIN from the United States.
Hello, I'm Dr. KARLIN, and I'm the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Strategy, Plans, and Capabilities in the Office of the U.S. Secretary of Defense. Although I'm unable to join you in Bucharest today, I appreciate the opportunity to virtually address this distinguished group. I'll share a few words today about how the United States views the strategic importance of the Black Sea region, the challenges we are facing, and what the United States is doing to address those challenges in close partnership with our allies and with our partners. First and foremost, the Black Sea region is an area of critical geostrategic importance. It links Europe to the Middle East and beyond, and it is a key node for transit infrastructure and energy resources. It is also a key front line for transatlantic security. Today, it is the site of the largest conflict in Europe since World War II. Europe and the world's response to Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine is nothing short of extraordinary. Together, we must continue to impose costs on Russia for violating the core principles upholding global peace and security by seeking to change the borders of a sovereign nation by force. As many observers have noted, Vladimir Putin did not expect the robust US and NATO response across the eastern flank, Germany's new defense posture, and the accession of Finland, and soon Sweden, to the alliance. Secretary Austin every month has convened for more than a year the Ukraine Defense Contact Group of some 50 nations, and they have garnered international support for Ukraine, resulting in more than $55 billion in lethal assistance for Ukraine's military. This community of action has facilitated an unprecedented level of cooperation to meet Ukraine's immediate and longer-term needs. Allies have doubled NATO's battle groups on the eastern flank to a total of 8, supporting a strong deterrence and defense from the Baltic to the Black Sea. And Romania's leadership in the Black Sea and Black Sea security has been critical to advancing NATO priorities. I had the privilege of seeing firsthand just how much Romania does when I visited last fall. We are especially grateful to Romania for hosting an increased US and allied rotational presence from Deveselu to MK Air Base to defend NATO's eastern flank and the Black Sea region across all domains. We continue to encourage deeper cooperation among Black Sea allies and partners to deter and defend against Russia's ongoing aggression in Ukraine and the broader Black Sea region. This cooperation includes further efforts to increase information sharing to build common awareness in the maritime domain and beyond. The United States and our allies and our partners are committed to supporting Ukraine for as long as it takes. Ukraine will continue to require the steadfast support of the international community to protect its skies and regain sovereign territory. There is a stark contrast indeed between the immense support for Ukraine on one hand and Russia's isolation on the international stage on the other. You know, our approach to these challenges is guided by the U.S. National Defense Strategy, which was released last year for the first time in an integrated way with the Nuclear Posture Review and the Missile Defense Review. This has led to more seamless approaches to deterrence and to risk management, and a tighter linkage between the Department of Defense's strategy and resources. The central premise of our National Defense Strategy is the urgent need to sustain and strengthen deterrence with the pacing challenge from the People's Republic of China and the acute threat posed by Russia. In dealing with these challenges, the National Defense Strategy identifies our allies and our partners as our center of gravity. It is a call to action for breaking down barriers to working with our allies and our partners on common objectives. As part of our implementation, we are working closely with our allies to align our defense strategies. And we are working hard to align our activities across all of the theaters, the domains, and across the entire spectrum of conflict to allow each stakeholder to bring our comparative advantage to bear. Our robust cooperation surrounding the war in Ukraine is a profound example of our strategy coming to life as we work across the US government and with our allies and partners to provide Ukraine with asymmetric capabilities to support its self-defense. In line with our strategy in the Black Sea region, the United States will continue to work with our NATO allies to advance military modernization to address Russia's military threat, including through our enhanced posture and exercises to improve security and prosperity for the region. The security of the Black Sea region will require a common approach to threats. Specifically, we must strengthen defensive anti-access area denial capabilities, indications and warnings, readiness through joint training and exercises, and resilience, including against gray zone and cyber actions. Our security environment in the Black Sea and beyond continues to evolve, fueled by not only aggressive behavior from Russia and the People's Republic of China, but also the rapid pace of emerging technologies, of climate change, of epidemics, and other global challenges. With our clear and focused strategy, and in lockstep with our allies and partners, we are acting to meet the moment today. Together, we will shape a safer and more just world for generations to come. I'd like to thank the Romanian Ministry of National Defense and the New Strategy Center for organizing today's event. I'd like to thank them for their continued partnership and for all of their important efforts on these issues. And I wish you productive debates in the remainder of the program. Thank you very much and have a good conversation.
Okay, so after such a comprehensive first intervention, I will pass the floor with no further delay to Madam Secretary of State Simona COJOCARU. Madam, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm really very glad to be back at Black Sea and Balkan Security Forum, already the 7th edition. I have witnessed from the beginning the progress made by the New Strategy Center in organizing the forum, which is very much essential for national and international debates on security and defense. And really, we need fresh ideas, we need dialogue, and to learn from each other. What a perfect setting offered by Assistant Secretary of Defense Mara KARLIN. Actually, we have been together visiting US troops in MK last fall, so she knows very well the situation here on the ground in Romania. I salute Secretary General VSEVIOV from Estonia. Very nice to have you here. We are absolutely glad. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are undergone at least a decade strategically marked by global competition and assault of authoritarian regimes on free and democratic societies. Transatlantic cooperation proved to be resilient in absorbing these shocks, and moreover, we are together today defending democracy in Europe. So we practically entered a new era of transatlantic cooperation. Russian war of aggression in Ukraine generated an terrible crisis, existential, if you like, with direct impact on international security order. And moreover, I'd like to say at this point that it has challenged the previous normal for security, expanding the pattern of aggression. It is indeed the bloodiest conflict in Europe since the end of the World War II, and of course, you know well, it is mainly conducted with conventional capabilities, but also it is using a cocktail of new technologies such as cyber, UAVs, satellite, alternating kinetic and non-kinetic attacks. So, 450 days of war in which Ukraine proved to be a nation, a strong one, a brave one, fighting for sovereignty, territory, culture, and identity. Probably you have seen also, as we did, Russia's annual Victory Day parade a few days ago, so very recently, in the Red Square, highlighted the logistical challenges that the Russian armed forces are confronted with in the last 15 months of war in Ukraine. So I'd like to say that what is today the transatlantic cooperation? Today we are talking about unity, we are talking about determination to help Ukraine. We are talking about a key juncture in the Euro-Atlantic security and stability. And at the end of the day, you know, apart from our shared values, commitment to promote and safeguard peace, freedom, and prosperity, we are defending our own way of living for our citizens, for our populations, for democracy, as I said, in Europe. And indeed, the title of the panel is absolutely real. We are stronger together. I'd like also to say a couple of words in relation with our partners in the East. We had yesterday in the beginning, in the opening of the forum, the Prime Minister Rechan of Republic of Moldova. So this country is amongst the most vulnerable partners, you know, suffering from multiple destabilization attempts, feeling the economic consequences of the war at the border, but firmly anchored on the European path. So I would like to underline here the critical importance of offering Republic of Moldova all the support it needs to increase resilience and defense capacities building at EU or NATO level also. So European security, US security are practically unbreakable. Moreover, transatlantic link acted as a real enabler of our cooperation in supporting Ukraine. And now I cannot but to refer to the Black Sea. Assistant Secretary of Defense Mara KARLIN did the same. Black Sea is today a critical frontier. And I said many times, is indeed a hotspot with a strategic amplitude. And here also in this area on the eastern flank, we are testing transatlantic cooperation, you know, in reinforcing deterrence and defense on the eastern flank and consolidating security in our region. Romania values the strong partnership with the US. We are steadfast in our enduring and exceptional relation with the United States of America. By the way, this year we are celebrating 30 years of partnership with Alabama National Guard, while last year we celebrated 25 years of strategic partnership with the US. So why I'm saying this? Because we are seeing now, we are witnessing a stronger US force posture in Europe, generally speaking, and in Romania also. 5,000 allied troops are currently deployed on national territory, with an important US contribution, as I said, complementing our national efforts dedicated to deterrence and defense. And I said also repeatedly that solidarity is not a manifestation somewhere in NATO HQ, so or in our offices back in the Ministry of Defense, in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but on the ground. And we are now having in Romania allies contributing to deterrence and defense under NATO or under bilateral arrangements, and I will offer a couple of examples. Portugal, North Macedonia, Luxembourg, Belgium, apart from traditional classic contribution by US, Poland, Italy, UK for air policing, and of course France, which is leading the battle group. So in a nutshell, I'd like to say that transatlantic cooperation is reinvigorated. This is absolutely clear. We have witnessed important decisions taken by our leaders last year in the summits organized at the NATO level. And moreover, we are very much envisaging new decisions by the next summit in Vilnius. So I could continue further on, but I'm very much eager to listen our Estonian friend.
Thank you very much, Madam Secretary. So I will pass the floor with that to Secretary General VSEVIOV. Sir, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, it's great for me to be here. Thank you for inviting. It's a wonderful, wonderful event. First time for me here. First time also for me here in Bucharest. And after what is now half a day of intense discussions with my interlocutors here, I can report back to all of you that we are absolutely like-minded with Romania on all matters of strategic importance that confront the Black Sea region, the Baltic Sea region, Europe writ large. We not only share the values, but also share tactical understanding of how to proceed from where we are today. I also, before I offer a few thoughts from my side, I see a lot of men and women in uniform in the room. I want to thank you for your service, but I especially want to thank your colleagues not too far from here, your colleagues from Ukraine, who are currently fighting for not only their security, but also for ours. As we're discussing security here in this absolutely gorgeous room, in this absolutely gorgeous building, let us not forget that security at the end of the day is not a theoretical question. It is a practical one. And we should consider ourselves to be extremely lucky that we get to have these discussions and deliberations today, because not all people in the world and not all people in Europe are enjoying that luxury today. Now, a few points I want to make. I'm really looking forward to the discussion later on, but just a few basic points from my perspective. First, the war in Ukraine is, for us in Estonia, existential, absolutely existential. Not because of Ukraine, but because what Russia is attacking is every core principle of European and international security upon which we've built our security. There was war in Ukraine before February 24th of last year. I know, I visited, I know many of you have. Crimea was annexed in 2014. There was a war in the Donbass. What is different now is not only the magnitude of the conflict, but also the fact that on February 24th of last year, all masks finally fell. Before it was possible to get confused, to misunderstand, to not know whose troops the little green men really were, what really happened in 2008 in Georgia. From February 24th of last year on, we all know what is at stake. We all know what is being attacked. Russia is not hiding the fact that it wants to fundamentally change every norm upon which we've built European security. And this is a large enough conflict to, in our opinion, reshape, whether we want it or not, reshape the basic norms of international behavior as they apply here in Europe and perhaps even globally. If we allow it to become the norm, that a larger neighbor can, with military force, change its smaller neighbor's borders, then we have a problem. If we allow it to become the norm that under certain circumstances, aggression as a tool of statecraft pays off for the aggressor, then we have a major problem. If we allow it to become the norm that a larger, perhaps a nuclear country can with impunity veto the right to exist of their neighbors, not just as a state but as a nation, then we have a problem. And by we, I don't only mean small Estonia that happens to live next to Russia, but we as an international community, we as Europe, have a problem. That is why this war is existential. Now let me also make it absolutely clear. In our assessment, none of Russia's strategic goals have changed. Nothing has gone well for them since February 24th, but none of their strategic goals have changed. They are not fighting this war for the city of Bakhmut. They are after all of Ukraine. They are after all of the European security architecture. So this, ladies and gentlemen, is a strategic struggle, not just a military conflict. It is a strategic struggle by diametrically opposing political goals. On the one hand, Russia's desire to reshape European security architecture, regain control, de facto control over all of Ukraine. And on the other hand, our desire to maintain a European security architecture that is based on a functioning NATO and a functioning European Union that keeps territorial integrity and sovereignty at the heart of it, and that guarantees that there is no impunity for crimes, war crimes, and the crime of aggression. In such struggles, all sides are losing steam. That is to be expected. This is a major undertaking. The Ukrainians are carrying the weight here. They're losing people, they're using civilian infrastructure. We know from our own societies, we feel the effects of this war. Estonia feels it, Romania feels it, we all feel it. I'm sure Vladimir Putin feels it worse than we do. The important thing is not whether we're losing steam. The important thing in such situations is who changes course first, who runs out of steam first. So it is our duty to ensure two things. First, sustain our resilience, the resilience of the Ukrainians, but also the resilience of us as an international community, us as NATO, us as the European Union. Sustain our resilience in every meaning of the word, politically and economically and militarily. And secondly, undermine the sustainability of Russia's theory of victory. And paradoxically, they're actually the same thing. Russia's theory of victory rests on the assumption that we will tire first. They understand that the West is stronger than they are politically and militarily and economically. What they expect to happen is for us to either lose focus, lose unity, lose our ability to sustain the course we've chosen. Dmitry Medvedev said it publicly before February 24th of last year. He said that don't worry, sooner or later the West will come back. They will come back, they will attempt another reset with us. That is at the heart of their theory of victory. For us to come out of this with the core principles of international and European security intact, we need to undermine that expectation. We need to take all oxygen away from that expectation. We need to prove that that theory of victory is wrong, that it's not going to happen. We will not change course. We may be slower than some would like. We may be noisy because we're democracies. And building consensus in democracies takes a lot of debate. But when it comes to our actual policy, not only are we staying the course, we're increasing temperature every week, every month as the war continues. So sustaining our own resilience and undermining the sustainability of Russia's war policy are not at odds. They're the same thing. We need to communicate a certain number of things to them to achieve both. So a few things that are important here. First, when it comes to sustaining our resilience in particular, we obviously need to make sure that we support the Ukrainians. There is a material aspect to this. We need to provide Ukraine with military assistance. Estonia has been doing it. Romania has been doing it. The United States has led in magnificent ways. There have been outstanding news, excuse me, coming out of a number of European capitals. Now that President Zelensky was on his European tour, it is of paramount importance that we communicate that our assistance is long-term, that it's not temporary, that it's not related to any particular battle that some people hope will take place in the near future. And in this respect, I want to draw your attention to the European Union's decision to provide Ukraine with 1 million rounds of 155mm howitzers. The decision is important because of the 1 million rounds, but it's equally, if not more important, because of another aspect of that decision. We, as the Union, will provide this assistance over the next 12 months. Again, communicating that we're not focused on any particular battle next week, next month, in 2 months' time. We're in this for the long haul. But on top of material support, we need to have an open discussion on what is at least as important as immaterial support. Every Ukrainian understands they're in this war because of a choice they made, a choice to live a European future. We need to provide the Ukrainian people with hope. Not that they will succeed tomorrow or next week, but that the path is still open and realistic. Notwithstanding the fact that Russia is attempting to destroy Ukrainian infrastructure, Ukrainian cities far from the front lines, notwithstanding the fact that Russia is throwing additional thousands and thousands of people at the front lines, keeping a meat grinder going that destroys not only the worst that Russia has to offer, but the best and brightest that Ukraine has to offer. We're in this too. And to be in this, we need to demonstrate to the Ukrainian people with tangible results that hope for a European and Euro-Atlantic future is still open for them. In this regard, the decisions that we as governments make in the coming weeks and months are going to be crucially important. The NATO summit in Vilnius will send a message on Ukraine, whether we want it or not, not even depending on the words that we end up using, we will be sending a message. NATO has already declared back here in Bucharest years ago that Ukraine will be a NATO ally. Ukraine has submitted an application. We all realize that joining the alliance is not a thing that happens overnight. The question is, what can we do to demonstrate that this promise not only is still alive, but that Ukraine can and will make progress step after step towards that goal. The European Union is making important decisions. They're making important decisions this spring. We'll be making important decisions in the autumn regarding the future of Ukraine in the European Union. We need to see both of those decisions, both of those paths, as not only important in of themselves, but also as important sources of hope for the Ukrainian people. And hope, ladies and gentlemen, is as important a resource as 155mm rounds. On undermining the sustainability of Russia's war policy, we need to keep raising the cost of aggression with additional rounds of sanctions and with political isolation. We have done most of what can be done with regard to big items that we can sanction. It is now increasingly important that we focus on implementation and on undermining Russia's ability to get used to the sanctions that are already in place. The European Union is working on the 11th sanctions package. We'll get it done, hopefully sooner rather than later. The message coming out the next day has to be, we're now starting work on the 12th, and then the 13th, and then the 14th. You think we're running out of steam? You think it gets increasingly difficult to build consensus in the Union? Think again. Think again. Who could have thought that we'd be able to agree with all 27 on 10 and soon 11 rounds of sanctions packages? Political isolation is at least as important. We have managed to kick Russia out of the Council of Europe. We need to ensure that there is no comeback to normal international life for them until they end aggression. And finally, we need to ensure accountability for the crimes committed. accountability for the war crimes and accountability for the crime of aggression that is at the source of all of those war crimes. Now, this is important because at the end of the day, this is how we define ourselves on the international stage. It is also important in order to communicate to the other side that it doesn't really matter what our governments and parliaments and people think and say. If you expect us to change course, we won't, because we've put in place processes that are not easily discarded. So it's strategically important to ensure that these processes move forward and that we ensure accountability for the crimes committed. Now, the very last thing I want to say is that we won't be able to do anything unless we maintain unity amongst the European family, but also with our transatlantic allies. Unity is absolutely key. Unity is the goal for the end of every meeting. In order to achieve unity, we need to have vigorous debates, work very hard, because the devil is always in the details. And the fact that we don't have unity at the beginning of the meeting is not a problem. It's by the end of the meeting that we need to get to a consensus and unity. We're going to be able to do that with regard to the Vilnius summit and with regard to EU decisions as well. And the very last thing, we should be careful when self-congratulating ourselves while the war is still going on. I know we keep pointing out the fact that we've surprised the Russians, we've surprised the world by the unprecedented level of unity that we've already demonstrated. It's all true, all true. But the only thing that matters is the end result. It's not what we say, it's not what we do, it's the end result that we manage to get that is important. Until and unless we get there, we should hold back with the champagne.
Thank you very much. With that, I open the session of question and answers. Please specify, if possible, who do you address the question. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm Olga Reznikov from Ukraine. And I would like to draw your attention to one very dangerous problem that can weaken the unity of the EU and NATO. Sometimes politicians speak about the assistance and support to Ukraine, but take in mind different things and different strategic goals. One of the strategic goals can be to help us to win in the battlefield, to win in the diplomatic field. And another strategic goal is to help us not to lose in the war. There are two different approaches that requires implementations different means. This can confuse population, that can confuse politicians around the world, maybe. It can create even war fatigue, this misunderstanding, to my mind. And what do you think? Is it possible? First of all, I would like to say that our strategic goal is clear, but a strategic goal of the Western country is clear only in general, because to my mind, different countries has different strategic goals. And what does it mean for unity of the EU and NATO? And could it be possible to articulate clear strategic goal of NATO, for example, at the summit that will be very soon, or it will be a new policy of open door, something like that, and it will mean nothing for Ukraine too. It will be very dangerous sign for Ukraine to my mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. Thank you for being here. Actually, I would like to say that almost 1 month ago, Here in Bucharest, we organized the first edition of the Black Sea Security Conference under KARLIN platform. We had Ukrainians on board because you mentioned, the comfort of such beautiful room, talking about security. And okay, we had Ukrainians. Minister Reznikov of Defense was taking part also, and also the Moldavian Ministers of Defense and Foreign Affairs. So very much important to have you, Ukrainians, on this kind of debates. You said, and I will say it myself, how important is the morale of the Ukrainians. Because Putin is not seeking only strategic or military objectives. He is seeking revenge on Ukrainians. Because all the attacks we are seeing on civilian infrastructure, on energy and all these kinds are absolutely targeting the Ukrainians' morale. And you said it repeatedly, hope. I think this is an important strategic goal, if you like, offering hope, a very tangible, pragmatic hope for Ukraine. And what I'd like to say is that I was in Brussels recently with the Deputy Minister of Defense, Andrei Shevchenko, taking part in the NATO-Ukraine Commission. Probably you know, in NATO we are trying to elevate the level, politically speaking, of this format, and there are currently a lot of negotiations in NATO HQ prior to the summit in Vilnius to elevate the relationship with Ukraine, not on political level, but also at practical level. And we are talking allotting more funds to the comprehensive assistance package for Ukraine. These may not seem strategic goals, but they are, because these goals are very, very tangible. And I do think that in the case of Ukraine, we have to talk more, not only about strategic goals, but about tangible support, politically, economically, military, on humanitarian front, energy, and so on. So I think in the next summit, which will be very much oriented on making operational decisions that our leaders taken last year in Madrid, we will achieve important progress in relation to Ukraine. It's of a paramount importance, and also with other, as I said, vulnerable partners, right, Republic of Moldova or Bosnia-Herzegovina. These are very, very high on the NATO agenda. The same is in EU. You probably know how important role the EU is playing right now via the European Peace Facility, via the training mission, military training mission, and EU is also on board, practically changing all the vision and philosophy of such an involvement towards Ukraine. So I'm optimistic.
Yeah, we don't have a problem defining the strategic goal. I could give a lengthy speech. I'll be very, very short. Our strategic goal is to help Ukraine win and help aggression fail, or ensure it fails. Our strategic goal is that there is sustainable and just peace in Europe, with territorial integrity and sovereignty back as real concepts that guide international life. Our goal is that the concept of the zones of influence goes back or remains in the dustbin of history. Our strategic goal is to eradicate the gray areas in the map of Europe that have been the source of tension and crisis and war since the end of the Soviet Union. So we have no problem articulating the strategic goal. And we also have no problem in doing so openly, because we don't think this is just aspirational. We believe it's realistic. This is a pivotal moment in European history. You know, time and again I have visitors coming to see us in Tallinn, Estonia, and they, sooner or later, they ask about whether this is realistic, whether we can really achieve it. Will the Russians really seriously pull out of Ukraine? And it's one thing to have this discussion somewhere in the West. It's a totally different feeling to have it in Estonia. We wouldn't be here if they hadn't pulled out. We wouldn't be here if they hadn't collapsed. So yes, it's achievable. We did it. So can Ukraine. Regarding the upcoming meetings, I think it's important to, first of all, obviously recognize what you said and understand that the Ukrainian people do need some assurances that when we say we're behind Ukraine, that we actually mean it for the long haul. So it has to be a combination of things that we say and things that are tangible and we can demonstrate that we do. What kind of a combination we'll be able to figure out and achieve consensus on, nobody knows. But I can assure you that we are working very hard day and night on it. And whatever result we get will be the best one that we were able to get. And then we won't be satisfied because it's unlikely that we'll be able to end history either at the Vilnius summit or during this very year. So then we will move on. We'll continue working until we achieve victory.
Anyone in the room? Then I will prolong a little bit with a question from my side. You both said that we have an important event, a NATO event in Vilnius, the next summit. So a lot of people talk about an important enhancement in NATO that would be a milestone in enhancing the posture of NATO, especially on eastern flank. We have heard that different actions like enhancing battle groups to brigade are to be taken into account. What are your expectations? What should we expect from this summit this year?
Vilnius is, it's between Madrid and Washington. When we are going to celebrate the 75th anniversary of NATO, Vilnius has an important, as I said, operational, implementational. Last year in Madrid, our leaders took very important conceptual decisions, needless to mention again, strategic concept, after more than 1 decade, translating from Russia being a strategic partner in Lisbon 2010 to being the most direct and significant threat to Euro-Atlantic security, and moreover, it's stating very clearly that Euro-Atlantic area is not at peace anymore, which is absolutely important, and also Madrid set the scene for what we are calling the long-term adaptation of the alliance. Very, very much important. So this time around in Vilnius next week, it's important, as I said, to focus on tangible results, progresses. We are talking a new force model in NATO. We are talking about defense plans. We are talking about, as I said earlier, on enhancing the political and practical support to our most vulnerable partners. We, from where I stand here in Romania, very close to the shore of the Black Sea, we are expecting NATO's approach, a comprehensive approach towards the Black Sea. We need a to-do list in relation with the security and stability of the Black Sea, which is very, very much important. Again, we need executable plans and very much sustainable. And Romania's commitment to NATO is absolutely clear. We are steadfast in our commitments. We are putting a lot of energy and financial resources to what is today a remade, if you like, alliance.
Absolutely. I mean, having worked on NATO issues for years now, it's almost astonishing how far we've been able to come on the seriousness with which we deal with collective defense. It's unfortunate that it took a war to get us where we are, but we're certainly moving in the right direction. Madrid made a number of important decisions. It is very important that at Vilnius now we be able to say that we've implemented them. A lot of this has to do with command structure and the planning and the plans. And I'm sure, I'm very optimistic that we'll be able to get there. It is equally important, though, to underline that that will not end history for collective defense. Even if we get a perfect plan, it's not about the plan, it's the planning that matters. Then we need to work on. We also need to find the forces and ensure that we have the forces so that the plan would not just be a piece of paper. And that's going to take a lot of money. So I can't but mention the defense spending aspect here. We've had the aspirational goal of 2% of GDP defense spending for all allies since the Wales summit. That was the Wales commitment back in 2014. It's going to be 10 years soon. We're not where we want to be. The trajectory is good, but we're not where we want to be. And frankly speaking, I don't think 2% is going to be enough. Estonia is going to be at more than 3% next year, not because of a promise we made, but because of our own assessment that this is what we need. Looking at the difficulties with which we struggle today when it comes to assisting Ukraine with ammunition, ensuring a sustainable defense sector, a sustainable defense industry, I think we need to confront the fact that we need to spend more. And then on the political side, we need to get Sweden in. We need to get Sweden in, and then Sweden and Finland integrated, while discussing open door with regard to other aspiring ally countries.
Thank you. We only have 3 minutes left, so I think there's one more question here, and this is the last one with your permission. Here, Mike, please.
Thank you very much. And it's great to hear all the things which have been said here. But one question, is Europe, and I'm talking about the EU and the European pillar of NATO, capable of winning the global competition to be able to provide all the things which committed in supporting Ukraine? And I'm talking about here the line of supply disruptions, the access to rare earth materials and semiconductors and all that stuff, because otherwise it will be just promises unless we have those capacities and we are realistic about what we have to do. 2%, excellent. More than 2%, even better. But we need to rebuild everything which was lost in the latest 20 years. Thank you.
So that's I want a short answer to such a complex question.
Thank you very much, General. Actually, yes, we need to rebuild everything that was lost, and there is a lot of progress at the level of the European Union, starting after 24 of February 2022. The EU embarked on such a massive effort towards helping Ukraine, and there is a lot of progress in doing this, not to mention also the sanctions and other instruments. And generally speaking, at EU level, we were used with some sleeping beauties in relation with the defense initiatives. Now we are seeing a stronger commitment by the European Commission on defense and security. We have seen a stronger commitment by the European defense agencies. There are a lot of initiatives in the EU right now dedicated to armaments, consolidating the industrial defense base. Our ministers of defense are going to meet next week in Brussels for the Foreign Affairs Councils in defense format. And one of the topics is exactly this one: reinvigorating, restarting practically the defense industrial base production in Europe, because this is indeed very important issues. And we have learned this lesson, not in relation with the war of aggression in Ukraine, but in relation with COVID-19 pandemic, when we have seen what poor supply chain of different equipments was existing at that time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I understand I have 1 minute and 40 seconds to answer a question, but the short answer is yes. But what's happening but it's going to take time. So what's happening right now is we as Europe are finding out that talk is easy and action is hard. We've been giving speeches on how we want to be relevant globally, and now we actually find ourselves in a situation where we have to be relevant globally. And that's a bit harder than just talking about it. So what we need to do is obviously recognize our weaknesses, try to fix them, but also utilize our strengths. We're still a major economic powerhouse. We're the world's leading development assistance provider. We are a diplomatic powerhouse in international organizations, but also bilaterally. We have a lot of things that are going well for us. The question is, how do we translate, how do we use those strengths and translate them into a coherent strategy to get the world to do what we need them to do. And this is where we're still in the very early phases of learning to be a strategic player. I don't think that our successes will start in faraway regions. The first true litmus test is going to be the immediate neighborhood, Ukraine, Western Balkans, our immediate neighborhood. But I think we're finally, as Europe, we're finally in the game.
Thank you very much. With that, allow me to address many thanks to our very special guests and their effort to be here to give us their impression. And please join me in a round of applause to them.